Hello and welcome back to the Customer Success Festival. I hope you found a presentation that answers your burning questions. If not, don't forget to join our Circle community where you can network with hundreds of other customer success professionals. If you prefer networking face-to-face, then you can join our virtual networking session on each day of the festival. Check out the schedule for more details. And now for our next speaker.
My name is Sharon Patching, and the session today is on adapting your CS strategy through times of change. So a bit about me before we get started. So I am the head of the global technical account management team, or technical CSMs, at a company called GitLab. I am a wife and a mom of two little girls. They are 2 and 5 on the left-hand side there. I was born in Canada and moved to England, moved to London when I was 18, lived there for some time, married a Brit, and then we moved together to the US and actually are now in California about 8 years ago. I've been leading customer success teams for around 12 years, before it was called customer success anyway. So a bit about GitLab. We are an open DevOps or DevSecOps platform. We are an end-to-end collaboration platform, really for product design all the way through to the creation of the code, through to the release of the code, testing of the code, and release out into production. So we enable all the different teams that are involved in that process to collaborate in one place. We are an all-remote company. We've always been remote, so we are one of the largest all-remote technology companies. Today, over 1,300 people worldwide. And we're an open source platform. So we have customers and part of our community that contribute back to our platform that have seen over 2,200 code contributions to date. At GitLab, one of our key kind of pillars of our success is our values. And so I talk about our values here because it pertains to what some of the things I'm going to talk about as we go through the session today. So our values you can see here on the left-hand side. And iteration and transparency and collaboration are going to be some of the key ones that I'm going to really talk about today as we think about managing teams through change and actually some of the key strategies in doing so. At GitLab, we are, in transparency, we are public by default. So we have our handbook, which is available. It details all of our processes, a lot of kind of how we lead our teams, which is completely available to you. You can find it online. We also have GitLab.com, our actual instance, where we're talking about our builds, and our customers are actually contributing ideas and actually giving feedback on some of the things that we're currently thinking about releasing or in the process of releasing. We do retrospectives with customers often. We have very kind of open, transparent conversations with our customers around what worked, what didn't work, and what we can do better next time. And we really push ourselves to be transparent at the most important times, which is when it's hard. So speaking of hard, change is hard. I think if we didn't know that before, we certainly do now, coming through the past year and change that we've all been through. So I wanted to talk about kind of 3 key themes today as we think about change and how do we manage teams and build strategy through change. So one is that your ultimate strategy has to always be customer value. Everything you build has to be pivoted on, will this drive value for our customers? I'll then touch on some change management techniques, things that we've seen work, kind of models that we've seen that in implementing will give you somewhat of a framework in thinking about applying change. And then I want to touch some on leading with transparency, as I've been talking about how important this is, about being open to change, and about celebrating often really being the key to success. So your ultimate strategy, customer value has got to be pivotal to everything that we do. I think we know that. But oftentimes when things become more challenging, it can be easy to hunker down and to start thinking about maybe the competition that we're seeing looming. Maybe it could be that we become more focused on how do we actually just stay afloat, and we get hyper-focused on internal things that are happening potentially. Maybe it's that we're pivoting and we're discovering that as a result of some of what's happening economically, that an area of our business is really excelling, and we need to rethink about how we actually approach our customer base. But number one is don't fall back into feature function. Don't let yourself be trapped into that, I need to compete by going back to bells and whistles and shiny objects. Maybe there are features that you need to consider building, and maybe there are different areas of the platform that need to be built upon. But your approach always has to be, regardless of season, regardless of times of change, about how do I drive more value for my customers? And if competition gets stronger, then you need to double down, double click even more into ensuring that I am thinking about customers' desired business outcomes, that we are aligning with our customers on those, and that we are then reporting back to our customer on progress that they're seeing against those goals. Because it's truly that piece, not the bells and whistles, that is going to keep your customers loyal to your business. I think we know this theoretically, but it's so easy in times of change to start to struggle and to start to point back to things that potentially can be shiny objects against some of our competitors, but it is really value that will keep your customers loyal to your brand. Metrics are the second piece, so don't lose sight of metrics. I think oftentimes when you're thinking about going through change, when we're thinking about the value potentially that we're driving for customers, we can then begin to look potentially at metrics, or maybe we don't have metrics, which is a completely separate piece. And those metrics become something that maybe is more aligned with the current situation that we're in, but doesn't necessarily relate back to customer value. So again, this is the key piece. Think about the why behind the metrics that you have. If your metrics are changing as a result of the change in strategy that you're going through, there needs to be a direct line back to how those metrics impact the customer. So for example, we think about onboarding and time to value. We talk about time to value because it is incredibly important that a customer quickly gets to value so that they're not having long periods of time in onboarding where they feel like they're not seeing return on investment. Because this is really where customers begin to become frustrated and you begin to introduce risk into your accounts. So that's why time to value matters so much, and why onboarding matters so much. Or you think about potentially a metric such as utilization of the platform. It's not just about ensuring that you can tick a box around logins or around consumption, but they actually point back to what's happening within an organization. Maybe you look at NPS. I know there's a lot of debate around the efficacy of NPS, but it is an attribute that points back to the customer's own satisfaction. It's not a vanity metric, and how you should be treating it and thinking about being able to broadcast your NPS score. The NPS gives you an opportunity to have a conversation with a customer around, great, it's a high score. What do you like about it? So how do we ensure we replicate these things? Or if it's a low score, how do we actually dig in and fix these things? It's actually the conversations that you have with customers behind the scores or as a result of the scores, which in my mind is really one of the most beneficial pieces about something such as NPS. So everything you think about in regard to metrics as you're building out your strategy in times of change needs to align with, is this driving value for the customer? Or is this driving value for our team? So I think there's two pieces too. I think it's oftentimes, particularly in times of change, it can get easy to be hyper-focused on what does the business need to exceed or to succeed. But there also needs to be an element too of how do we ensure that the team continues to be supported throughout this process. And I'll talk about some frameworks for that in a minute. But team satisfaction metrics, as we go through these change, how am I going to track other than just qualitatively? Although that does matter, that the team are actually coming alongside. So is there ways that we can establish even lightweight metrics in place that can ensure that both of our customers are happy and also that our teams are alongside and are bought into the strategies that we're rolling out? So in thinking about change, number one, document your strategy. I know this seems really obvious, but write it down. And write it down in a place where you can begin to have a central place that people can have visibility into the strategy and where you can iterate on it. Don't just put it in a deck and then put it somewhere that people can't find it again. And when you're thinking about documenting your strategy, what you see here on the right-hand side are just some good ways to think about that framework. So first, of course, is the what. What are we trying to do? I think it's so easy sometimes to go into the how or the what is changing without saying ultimately what is the goal. So we are pivoting because we have found an area of our business that no longer is successful as a result of what's happened over the past 12 months. What is the goal? The goal is that we move focus and we move customer adoption into this other area of our business, and we're going to do that through this process over this time. So why? Because we want to see customers be successful, using this example, because we want our business to continue to be successful, because we want have the team be fulfilled in the engagements they're having with their customers. And then the how. Articulate the plan. I think oftentimes we can feel like great kind of waterfall project plans potentially are what you have to have for change management, but anything articulated is better than nothing. So you've got your goals. Here's what we're trying to strive for. Why are we doing this change? Here's how we're going to go about doing this change, understanding that we're going to iterate on this. It may change. The who and the when, assigning owners and timelines. So timelines change, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have one to begin with. So at least lead with, these are the time frames that we're going to be proposing to move forward with these strategic changes over. And then most importantly, and I certainly have seen how important this is really over this past year, as our teams have been so isolated and siloed, what's in it for me? Spell out how this is going to impact not just your customer and your business, but also how it's going to help your team. How the team is going to actually be benefited from these changes, what it means to them, to the fulfillment in their role, to their job satisfaction. This is an incredibly important piece in getting buy-in to any strategic change that you make and roll out. Once you've documented your strategy and kind of gone through that initial process, then make room for feedback and iteration. I would highly recommend that your next step is not to then roll it out, but you actually open up a forum to receive feedback. We do this through issues at GitLab. We actually have, oftentimes when we're beginning to build out a new strategy or make key changes, we'll articulate that within an issue, and then we open it up to our teams, maybe to the TAM team, or even to all of GitLab as a whole, depending on who all the decision is or the new strategy is impacting, for feedback. We have a clear DRI, or directly responsible individual. We have a timeline for the decision. We're not moving to a vote in opening this up. We do want to make sure that we consider feedback early and often, so that we don't roll something out and then discover that it's actually not the right direction, or that there are things we hadn't thought about, or maybe just that we don't get buy-in from the teams that we're rolling this out to because we didn't introduce the ideas to them early enough. Be as transparent as you can in the decision-making process. So document your strategy, open it up for feedback, whether you use GitLab for issues or whether that's a Google Doc, whether you present it in a QBR or a team meeting, but give people somewhere and give them an avenue to be able to feedback on that idea. And ideally in writing, somewhere where they can actually give that feedback, think about it, and you have that documented feedback that you could read through and then consider whether or not you potentially need to iterate on your strategy based on feedback. Then give yourself time for iteration. The last thing you need is to be able to have a day or two to get feedback when you're trying to ship a strategy and ship change within a couple of days. Assume that you're going to need to iterate on your strategy based on the feedback that you get from the teams, and give yourself that room. And then do make sure that it is clear to the teams that you are the one making the decision, or if not, that who is the one making the decision, that there's going to be a timeline, that all feedback will be considered, and then we are going to move forward within this set date. Once you have documented your strategy, you've taken feedback on it, you've gotten to your final strategy, and you've then rolled that out, make sure you clearly communicate what the strategy is and document it in a place that people can find it. I cannot say enough how important it is to not just have it in a deck that you present once and then assume that it's out there. We at GitLab, as I referred to before, have the handbook. We document all of our processes and our strategies there. So we use issues for collaboration for feedback, but once something is determined, we then move it into the handbook, and then that becomes readily available for our teams, but also for the general public too, if you're interested to see some of the things that we're doing. So it becomes something that the TAM team can readily find. So as we think about metrics for this year, those are documented in the handbook, the customer metrics that we're thinking about. We think about approach and various different things that we're rolling out potentially as we move into this year. Those are also documented in the handbook, with the guide being that a new TAM comes on board and they don't need to then find out through tribal knowledge some of the key things that matter, such as metrics or direction, but it is all available to them in a place that is easily searchable. Maybe it's an internal wiki, a Google Doc if you need to go that way, but make sure it's somewhere that is easily available to the team, that they know how to reference and they can find the goals and remind themselves of such. And the other piece as you start to think about rolling forward with your strategy is ensuring that you're really focusing on the results and not the tactics. And I say this because I think one of the things that I have really learned over this last year in a new way, in working with teams who are so used to iterating on ideas, is that there are going to be better ideas than yours on potentially some of the how we go about doing this. So you want to make sure that you set a strategy, you lead with that, you take feedback, you do roll out a strategy, but then be open to feedback throughout the process. Focus on what are we trying to solve for? What are the ultimate goals we're trying to solve for? What are the key milestones we're looking to get to? And then let go of the tactics to a degree, to let the team actually give feedback on how things are going, and to give yourself both the flexibility and the freedom to really iterate on the steps to get you to those milestones and goals as you begin to work with your team on the rollout itself. Once it's out there, once it's documented, once you begin to really communicate your plan and make it clear, then enable, enable, enable. Don't assume that just because you said your strategy once that people are going to remember it. I have made the mistake many times in the past of building out a plan, and it's ingrained to me because I'm spending so long thinking about it, and then I launch it to the team, and then I am confused by why the team can't quite remember the detail, when maybe I spelled it out once or twice at best. Make room for yourself to go through this plan over and over again. Build out enablement sessions. Drill down deep. Expect to repeat yourself. Plan to repeat yourself, whether it's QBRs or team meetings. Remind the teams of the key milestones and the key goals often. What are we trying to solve for? What are we working towards? What is the progress we've made to date? Keep going over those pieces. Build into your strategy ongoing iteration on enablement for your team to ensure that they not only feel comfortable in what they're trying to solve for, but also that they feel supported in the progress forward. That this isn't just a strategy that's happening to them, but that they are truly equipped to partner with you in solving and achieving this strategy. And then throughout the process, one thing that I've really been learning to a whole new level through GitLab that I'm so grateful for is lead with transparency and be open to change. It doesn't mean that the goals change, and I hope that they don't, because that can be confusing. And maybe even the milestones, I would suggest to the best of your ability, you want to kind of keep those stable so that you're working to the same thing and that's not shifting. Shifting priorities can be incredibly frustrating and quite, it can end up being quite overwhelming to a team, and you can lose people that way. But be open to change through the process that I was talking about, letting go of the tactics necessarily, giving people the freedom to figure out how they're going to get to those goals that have been established. Be transparent as you can. Open up as much as you possibly can to the team. And transparency doesn't mean just telling everyone everything after it's done, but bringing them into the process as much as possible. If you find that you do need to change tact or potentially a milestone needs to move, have that conversation with the team as early as possible so that they don't feel like change is happening to them, but the change is happening with them. And really getting buy-in is about ensuring that people are brought into the processes early on so they together are a part of determining what needs to change and rolling that out with you. It can be slower because it's not just as easy as deciding what you want to do and implementing it, but you will get more buy-in and ultimately you'll be far more successful. And you'll also bring your team along the journey with you, which means that they will be more fulfilled in their roles and the team health will be much greater than if you're just implementing your strategy almost in spite of the team around you. Be open to feedback. I think it can be challenging to roll out a strategy and then have people feel like it's potentially maybe some of the trajectory is not the right one. Be open to the feedback. I really try and lay it out for my team that nothing is off the table. We're still striving towards these goals, and some goals will never be moved, such as ensuring our customers stay happy customers and grow, because ultimately we're a business. But other things, maybe we need to reconsider them. Make yourself open to your team as you're rolling through these times of change. Make sure they know that they can challenge some of these ideas and some of these strategies even. Make sure that they know that they have the autonomy to find better ways to get to results faster. We hire smart people for a reason. Give them the opportunity to come up with ways to augment your strategy and make it even better over time. And then ensure you revisit and reiterate on your goals often. Just because we're working towards the same thing and we, through OKRs or metrics or whatever it may be, know what the next milestone is, it can sometimes be easy to lose sight of the ultimate goal, just with everything that's going on, both professionally and also personally over this past year. So make sure you carve out time to reiterate, what are we trying to solve for? What does this mean for our teams? What are the benefits of us getting here? So the team are refreshed through being reminded of ultimately that vision of what we're striving for. And most importantly of all, celebrate. Make sure that you find ways to celebrate wins along the way. Don't just wait until you've got there to celebrate. Even with milestones or with little wins, when someone does an excellent job of finding a better way, a faster way to get towards a milestone, celebrate those. We have, at GitLab, we have discretionary bonuses where actually peers can nominate each other for discretionary bonuses, which is an awesome way just to say, hey, that was really great that you did. We celebrate it in a Slack channel where you can read through and see all the people who are being nominated for these. We have a thank you channel. So we will just go in and say thank you for a great coffee chat, or thank you for going above and beyond something that you did. And we really try and find ways to celebrate just both excellence, but also just people who have gone above and beyond in their roles, to really say thank you to those. I think one of the things that I have really learned to a new degree working at GitLab is just how far that goes. I think sometimes we underestimate just stopping and saying thank you to people along the way, the impact that has on their state of well-being and how invested they are in both the company and also in the vision and the team, because they feel more a part of things and because they feel valued. So hopefully some of this was helpful. I hope kind of in thinking about how do I set a strategy overall, what should I be focused on? I think with my kind of parting words would be, I would encourage you that even if it's fairly minimal in your strategy to begin with, and even if your framework is fairly simple, any strategy is better than none. Start with a goal, come up with a couple of metrics that are going to get you towards that goal. Make sure they always align with company value, or with customer value and with company value, and also consider the teams that are a part of it. Put a framework in place for change, however simple. Document everything and make sure it is available to the team. Be open and humble and available for feedback. Hope that others come up with better ways to get you to some of your milestones and objectives than you even came up with yourself. And then celebrate often. Thank you.